What's up, guys? Birthday weekend for me, so I guess happy birthday to me.
Happy birthday!
So, either way, we took the Bonneville for, I guess, it would really be its maiden trip. We drove it out to a local little cruise night spot, about 30, 40 minutes away from us, east, closer to the city, and did really good. This thing is running awesome. The transmission shift issues I had are definitely a cross leak, but it's because of the shifter. The shifter is getting jammed in between gears, and sometimes I don't get third when I bump from second to third. Sometimes 1 to 2 doesn't hit right. So the fix for that is just to get a new shifter, and I've known about this. So, but when it grabs, man, this thing pulls really good. I kind of beat on it a lot yesterday. That is my way to test my work, is to beat the crap out of it straight off the bat. Got to put faith in your work. So, if you guys have been following the saga of my electric fans, you guys know that I had a draw problem. Well, I put the mechanical fan back on and I wanted to see how it ran since I didn't have a full shroud. I showed you guys what I made. My biggest concern is that it was going to be a pretty warm day. It's going to be in the 80s. We're going to be driving it. I wanted to make sure that it was going to run good. So the first morning after I did that, I drove it in the morning before I got to work, and it ran good. I parked it. I went out, left for lunch because I live close to work. And I come home for lunch. So I go to start it, nothing at all. Like no spark. And the weird part is that I'm getting no voltage reading on my dash. I'm like, dude, this battery isn't dead. This thing is cranking like I got full voltage. This car has a kill switch. But before I did that, I did my usual. Let's put a jumper. The beauty of the HEI is if it's a wiring problem and you can jump it from a constant hot, I put a jumper from my remote solenoid hot to the ignition and it fired right up. So I got a problem there, which that initially made me think the kill switch. Maybe I've been driving it a little too spiritedly and the switch got knocked. So I got it started. I managed to wiggle the switch just right. I got it home. And on my lunch break, I kind of messed with it. So what I found was, most switches have to do this. Mine was stuck on the on position, but it was like not, having continuity. There's random background noise, I know, guys, but like it was like stuck. So it wasn't, I think what happened was the kill switch that has been in the car for over 20 years is under amped. This is an example. It was about like a 10 amp switch, but it's definitely a 30 amp circuit because it's got a 10 gauge wire. So usually, again, talking with my boss at work, he's really good with this stuff. I've learned a lot on electrical from him and friends as well. But he's like, usually like a 10 gauge wire is like 30 amp and so on and so forth. You got ratings. It's a 10 gauge wire, but I had like a 10 amp switch on there. And I was so pissed off, I fucking chucked it. It's somewhere in here. I was so pissed off. In the meantime, I put a butt connector in and it's working fine, but I have to ultimately bring the wires together, solder them, and make a nice connection there because it is a 30 amp connection there. So now that brings me to the next point. I have to now go back, try the fans, and see what happens because I think that switch being bad was causing all kinds of issues. In the past, my power windows were always slow. Out of nowhere, they're working retarded fast. Like way faster than they ever have. And then I'm getting full like 14 volts on my gauge, which your voltage should read between 13.8, 14, and then, obviously once it's really loaded, it should be 12. So I think my load issues weren't the fans being bad. It wasn't my wiring being bad. It was a switch that I never thought about before because it's been in there for so long.
Like the light bulb?
Yeah, like the light bulb in the back that I didn't replace, and I spent a ton of time tracing it. My wife reminded me that I killed hours trying to diagnose a wiring problem when it was a bad bulb. Lovely. Sometimes it happens. You get caught up in thinking bigger things and it's something similar, small, like me. That switch was a small thing, but I never thought about it. And so I just put a butt connector in there. We drove it out and the car ran great. I mean, it was probably low 80s by the time we headed out. Car ran like 165, 180 constant. Fluctuated a little bit. And then once you hit a light, if it was a really long light, you'd hit 190 and then it would drop right back down as soon as you started moving. So this thing is working perfect. I still plan on putting electric fans on it though, but for now, in the process of figuring things out, I think we've unearthed a couple of issues, and I do have to go back and I'm going to solder that wire and leave it be. And if I have more problems, I have to take the dash apart and go through the wiring because my uncle did a bunch of shit in there, and I don't know what was done years ago. I mean, this, like I said, this car's been in our family for over 30 years, and it's had its fair share of backyard repairs, and I'm kind of figuring things out. So, but besides that, this thing's running good. I actually been driving it the last couple of days, and it's been really nice. I love it. It's a great cruiser, but the more that I beat on it, the more that I really want a big block in it. My mind has changed, but it's such a good driver, man. I love this thing. It drove great. It's got a couple of suspension noises, which I think because I have a solid aluminum spacer in the bottom of the control arm, whenever it dips, it moves around and it makes all kinds of ruckus. So eventually I'm going to have to address that. There's an exhaust hanger that is kind of weebling around. It's tight, but it moves and it rattles a little bit. Got that, but nothing major. Car's running really, really good. It's like mint. It fires up. I pumped the gas once, fires and idles great with no choke. So I have to do a cold start on it one day when it's cold out to show you guys the comparison of the EFI, because we did that in the past. But the Edelbrock carb has worked really good on this car, and they've worked really good for me. So besides all that shit, tomorrow, which is actually my birthday, I'm going to head down to the shop, and we're going to test out the Demon finally. Tonight, I am going to do a few base checks, idle screws. I know the float bowls are good, but I have to check the pump cam overrides. And then tomorrow we'll play carburetor bingo at work, and as long as it idles good, as long as I can launch it and do a good burnout, and it can do those three things, this is good for the track. I'm not going to worry about this on the street. This is more of a test subject for the track, really, than on the street. And if it does work good at the track, then maybe I'll dive into it and put more time into it on the street, because anybody who's ever tuned like a street strip car for dual purpose knows that how hard it is to get that perfect median where you're not killing performance at the strip and you're not killing performance on the street, and it's a very fine line to walk. And on this car, I wish I could say that there's a couple of things that, I mean, it's really good, but there's a couple things about the setup that I have now on my Cutlass that really bug me about on the street, mainly that in gear, the idle is a little lower than it should be, but I think it's because I'm a little understalled for my setup. And my timing, the fact that I'm kind of tied to the curve that I have, I really should be locking it out, but yada, yada, yada. Neither here nor there. But either way, that's my only gripe about my tune right now, is that at idle and drive, it's a little lower than it should be, but it doesn't die or stall. And as long as this thing works good in those three parameters, I am willing to try this out at the track next time we go. And when I come back home tomorrow, I'm going to come back home on the Holly, and we'll swap this out at the track. Our next time out at the track, the goal will be make a couple runs with the old slicks, get the car, make sure it runs this, get a good baseline of the car running in the same form, and then we're going to try the radials, and then we're going to try some bump stops if need be in the front to limit suspension travel and chase a little bit more out of the 60 foot. So thank you guys for following and subscribing. I got quite a few steady viewers, and I appreciate that, and just letting you know what's going on. And we haven't forgotten about this. This will go on this weekend, and I'll make videos about that tomorrow. And so as far as this goes, it's pretty much done. I got to put the back seat in it, and we just got to drive it more. So I think from here on out, we're pretty much going to focus on taking the Bonneville out whenever we do go out, although I do plan on taking this out at least to our cruise night spot once this year, because this thing gets a lot of attention. this car got a lot of attention yesterday, which I really appreciated. A lot of people really liked the attention to detail under the engine bay, and a lot of people appreciated that it didn't have a small block Chevy in there, and they were actually greeted with a small block Olds. A little different. Pontiac guy approved, apparently. So, let you guys go. Share, like, subscribe. Just a little update. Tomorrow, we'll hit it with the carburetor on this thing, and we'll do some more testing.